Hello, everyone. Welcome to the series of interview on cybersecurity with us, Cyan. I'm Eva Tasheva, your host, and it's my pleasure to introduce you our now regular speaker, Kai Zenner, Head of Office of Member of European Parliament, Axel Voss. Hello, Kai.
Hi, Evie. Thanks for the invitation.
Today, we will discuss the AI Act, the European AI Act. We have had a discussion of what is it and what were the main challenges 1 year ago when the act was in the making. Kai shared with us what were the key challenges back then and the recommendations that you've been working ever since to improve it. We discussed what it means for cybersecurity and how to fit the complex EU legislative framework. How companies could prepare for it. We discussed a year back, and today we would be able to reiterate what are the final decisions, what is the final text, because we are happy to announce there is a final AI Act that will be published in the official journal. But for those of you that want to see everything in progress, go back, see the previous video. Today, we would discuss how to implement and what it really means in practice. As a quick word, Kai, how would you best summarize the AI Act and maybe also highlight what is it about and what is it not about?
Yeah. So basically, the European AI Act is based on the same internationally agreed principles that we also find in the executive order in the United States, in the UK, proposals on AI, on the eIDAR law from Canada, and so on. So those principles like human oversight, transparency, data governance, fairness, and so on, that the international community agreed AI policies should stick to and should integrate. What makes the European AI Act special is that we integrated those principles in a typical product safety legislation piece that is based on notified bodies, conformity assessments, and so on. And that those principles are complemented with other minimum safeguards or minimum criteria that in the future all AI technologies need to stick to. I'm saying all, which is not 100% true, because in addition, the European AI Act is based on a risk-based approach, which means that those minimum criteria are 100% applying to the so-called high-risk AI systems. There are also certain systems that are prohibited. And then there are two other categories that just need to fulfill certain criteria or even no criteria. But yeah, I would say this two elements, a risk-based approach and a product safety approach, are the main points that make the AI Act special. But this combination also means that the AI Act is not going in that level of detail. So it's not telling every AI developer to a minor extent what he or she needs to do. So it's really more principle-based, as I underlined at the very beginning.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned that it applies to different types of systems. It's not just any type of AI. Could you give us some practical examples of the AI systems in the scope of the
AI Act? Yeah, since we have an audience that is more coming from the security area, maybe let's focus on areas that are listed here in the AI Act. First of all, as I said, the highest risk category are the prohibitions, so technologies that are not really fitting in our legal system or ethical systems. And there, it's mainly remote biometric identification, so facial recognition that is going in a kind of surveillance area, social scoring, if it's going in a direction of those test projects that we are seeing in China, also certain forms of emotional recognition, yeah, a lot of stuff that would fall in directions that, for example, Clearview was using social media accounts and putting it together in big data sets, combining it with CCTV and so on. So basically, Article 5, the prohibition, is focusing really strongly on law enforcement or public authorities using artificial intelligence to address certain security concerns. Then in the next category, the so-called high-risk AI systems, again, we have there one area related to remote biometric identification, but also to critical infrastructure. So something that is very important for many people that are listening now, things that are already falling under NIS2 or the Cyber Resilience Act now also need to consider certain high-risk obligations from the AI Act. And then, again, similar to the prohibitions in Article 5, Annex 3 is also listing a lot of use cases from the migration or border management area, from the law enforcement area, for example, a lie detector, and so on and so on. And maybe as a last example, chatbots. So if the state or if a police force or a company is using a chatbot, for example, as a first responder, and if a company received or had a cyber attack and then is trying to reach the cybersecurity company that is helping this company to get prepared or to respond, this chatbot would also need to follow certain obligations, certain, again, safety minimum standards. So a lot of different areas and use cases that in the future the AI Act tries to regulate in the same way. So they would all need to fulfill the same obligations in their risk category.
So you repeated a few times safety. So here
Yes.
the focus is on the safety of the systems. But there is also cyber security requirements which are applicable to what you very well defined as the high risk AI system. Could you guide us of some of the examples of these requirements, and also are there any standards which are recommended?
Yeah, so on that point, it's really important to check where you as a company are located in the AI value chain. If you are working on something like ChatGPT, or even behind it on a foundation model that is a basis for a general purpose AI system such as ChatGPT, you need to look at Article 55, which is for systemic general purpose AI models. And those, so probably companies like Anthropic, like OpenAI, maybe like Aleph Alpha or Mistral AI from France, they need to ensure that their model is having an adequate level of cybersecurity protection, that, for example, there is something done against large cyber attacks that are using those models to do certain things, for example, against security systems of states and so on. How you need to fulfill this obligation is right now quite unclear, because it's actually just one sentence in Article 55 1D, so a sub-paragraph, and it will be further specified in codes of practices that the Commission hopefully soon starts to develop, and maybe later on also in standards. If you are, however, located in the AI value chain, more in the area of a system, so a high-risk AI system that is already rather narrow in the scope of tasks. So, for example, you are developing an high-risk AI system that is taking care of the cybersecurity or the firewall of a company that is itself in the critical infrastructure area. Then Article 15 that we discussed the last time already is very important, which gives you, again, certain sets of minimum criteria. You need to have appropriate level of accuracy, robustness, cybersecurity, and so on. And so on. We made a few changes on that article, so a few points have been added. The Commission, for example, needs to provide now in the next months kind of metrology, benchmarking, and so on. They need to build up an authority that is helping there. And what the Parliament also did in the past months was to make sure that the obligations are fulfillable. So there was one obligation that the high-risk AI system needs to be resilient towards all potential errors. And this, for example, was now changed that you need only to be as resilient as possible regarding errors, faults, inconsistencies, and so on. And maybe a last point here is that the language is similar to NIS2 and the Cybersecurity Act. Nevertheless, you really need to study what is in the AI Act because it's similar, but it's at the same time still different, and certain elements you find in the AI Act you don't find in the existing cybersecurity legislation that is already out there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very interesting. We will touch upon this point. I just wanted to also highlight, we as a cybersecurity consultancy, we looked into the Article 15 with a lot of attention. We would also launch an infographic to help those navigating the AI Act from cybersecurity perspective to know what's most important. And indeed, the focus, as we see, is on the life cycle. So it's not about point of time. It's really about creating systems that are robust over their life cycle, take into consideration secure risk management, but also considering vulnerabilities as well, very important part. You mentioned there are some similarities, and are there overlaps? Are there inconsistencies or contradictions still to fix when it comes to interaction with other applicable regulations? Cybersecurity requirements, you say, similar to NIS2. Critical infrastructure. Is there any tips or anything you would like our audience to be aware about inconsistencies, overlaps, or issues?
As you know, you are also now for quite some time already living in Brussels, and unfortunately we in Brussels are often working in political silos, and this is really something that we saw in the whole negotiations on the European AI Act. Especially our colleague Eva Meidel from Bulgaria, EPP, she, because she is in the ITRE committee, she was really trying to make sure that Article 15 is aligned with existing cybersecurity regulation. But unfortunately, many other colleagues here in the Parliament, but also in the Commission and in the Council, were not that interested to look into all those details. And as you know, the European AI Act was highly disputed within the Parliament, within the Commission, within the Council, and many players felt a little bit left behind or excluded. And yeah, this kind of internal competition within the institutions led indeed to very likely certain contradictions or overlaps that we were not managed to exclude. Now, particular to cybersecurity, one thing that we never checked in detail was indeed what is now in the Cyber Resilience Act that is at the same time in the AI Act. If you need to do a risk assessment, for example, in the AI Act, is this maybe already covered by other risk assessments, for example, also because of the medical device regulation or because of cybersecurity legislation? I hope that in the future there will be now in this kind of implementation and enforcement phase, there will be more work, especially from the Commission, that is trying to identify parallel obligations and trying to merge them or to say companies that in the future they don't need to do it in parallel, but for example, if they do already something in the Cyber Resilience Act, they can use it also for the AI Act to show their compliance. But yeah, this is just a wish. Right now, again, those acts are completely unrelated. No one really has a complete overview how they are all let's say related to each other, if they are complementary, if one act is lex specialis, so is more important basically, or is in the end the act that is excluding the other obligations. And I think what companies right now should do is help a little bit the public authorities and show them that there are certain obligations that companies feel are overlapping, and then asking them basically concretely, what do you want us to do? It sounds a little bit stupid, and let's say the European institutions should not have created such a situation, but yeah, now we have it. And I think if companies are challenging a little bit the enforcement bodies by saying, look, how do you want us to do it? They will trigger an answer. And with this answer, I think they will finally get a little bit legal certainty that right now no one has, also not the public sector.
Mm-hmm. We'll touch upon the element of timing, because it's also very important. But before that, something that triggered me when I listened to you is, yes, there are conformity assessment, right?
Yeah.
This is also the proposed framework for the Cyber Resilience Act, which would regulate the cybersecurity of products with digital element. Conformity assessment is existing system. For instance, we currently have for medical devices, something that we've worked with my colleagues, and it just means you would not be able to launch product on the market before you are allowed to do so. Well, either it is self-assessment, self-declaration, but you have to have your documents set and ready and compliance with the regulation, or it could also be assessment by a conformity assessment body. Is it always the case? For instance, of course, we are mostly interested in the high-risk AI systems. Would they always have to go through conformity assessment, or is an option also of voluntary standards implementation or self-assessment available? I'll give you another example. In Belgium, we have NIS2 new law that was just transposed national legislation, which provides for the local cybersecurity framework, Cyber Fundamentals, certification as a conformity, presumption of conformity. So one would not need to go through an audit if a critical infrastructure, but could also be certified against specific standards. Is there such options in the AI Act provisions?
Yeah, it's a good question and several answers on it. So first of all, conformity assessment from our side as EPP, we are quite happy because we push back against this this demand from a lot of political groups that we have in the future third-party conformity assessments for each high-risk AI system. As you already indicated, it's not the case in the AI Act. In the future, only or right now, only high-risk AI systems that are falling under Annex 3.1 biometrical identification systems would need to go to a third-party conformity authority that is giving you such an assessment. All others can do it internally, which gives companies, of course, much more freedom. They need to have it. They need to have the documents so that if market surveillance authorities have some questions, they can show something. But they don't need to wait, as you indicated, for example, with medical devices. What we are hearing is that some companies are waiting for 1 year or 2 years to get the conformity assessment, or sometimes even leaving the European Union to get it at a third country and then coming back. Those things right now we will not see with the AI Act, or only in a very limited area. This can, of course, change. I think it's Article 43, paragraph 7, that gives the Commission the possibility to make third-party conformity assessments mandatory also for other areas if they feel that, for example, those internal conformity assessments are not working in the critical infrastructure area or something like that. But yeah, the Commission cannot just change it. They need to do a consultation, and it would be via delegated acts. So the Parliament and the Council could still reject such an idea. Then, as you said, standards are also an important mechanism in the European AI Act to show that you are in conformity with the European AI Act. Right now, here we have a little bit the problem that CENELEC is working on those standards, but depending with whom you are speaking, there are a lot of voices that they are behind this time schedule, and probably those standards will not be there when the AI Act and especially the high-risk obligations are becoming applicable in summer 2026. And this then leads to this big question. Standards should be basically the easiest and cheapest way to show your compliance with the AI Act. But if those standards are not there in time, how companies are doing it? Then maybe third-party conformity assessments, even though you don't need to do it, are, especially for larger companies, the safest way to show your compliance. So what could happen is that many companies feel forced to do it, even, as I said, even though it's not mandatory. We need to see a little bit. There are, you mentioned certification, there are also other ways to show compliance in the AI Act. There is an article on certification. There are also codes of conduct, voluntary types, codes of practices, and so on. All of those, the Commission, similar to standards, would need to assess, and in the end would need to issue a decision that those standards or codes of conduct are in line with the AI Act. And then those mechanisms could be also another way to show compliance. But as you see with my language, it's all in the future. Nothing is right now on the table. So right now, in my opinion, companies and especially startups and SMEs have a rather tricky time ahead because they don't know how to fulfill the AI Act obligation. It's maybe just because you were mentioning it, one point where we will also see some developments is, I think, Article 42, which is saying if you are already fulfilling certain Cybersecurity Act obligations, that then you are benefiting from a presumption of conformity with regard to Article 15 that we already discussed, the cybersecurity obligation article. But also here, it's unclear when you benefit from the presumption of conformity. So the Commission still needs to probably provide a kind of template, or the different enforcement bodies need to adjust a little bit when this presumption of conformity is kicking in. So a lot of legal uncertainty, but to see it more positive, we have the chance over the next months and 1-2 years to deliver on all those points, and then have hopefully all those secondary legislation available, so that then companies really know how to understand those rather vague or general obligations that you see in the AI Act.
Mm-hmm. Indeed, on the positive note, as you said, maybe we can touch upon the timeline. Today, in July 2024, we would have published the AI Act legal text. From there, one can see the requirements, the cases, the scope as well, the who and what, how it's going to be defined in the next year. And specifically, the cybersecurity requirements would be enforceable for high-risk AI systems in July 2026, or around July 2026, right? We have
exactly
2 years.
Except if you are a model provider, so if you are really developing a systemic general purpose AI model, then already next summer, the paragraphs that I was talking about, Article 55, 1D, is becoming applicable, so that you need to ensure adequate level of cybersecurity protection for your GPAL model. But as you said, yes, otherwise everything else becomes applicable in summer 26 in cybersecurity field.
The cybersecurity requirements, we also have requirements for serious incident reporting, correct?
Yes. Indeed, yes.
This already
also exactly where, however, we never really in detail discussed the cybersecurity aspects in this field. And as I indicated already many times in our talk, I would have hoped for much more in-depth or much more detailed negotiations, and maybe taking a little bit more time, and also including all those other policy fields, because incident reporting is something that your field is having a lot of experience already with. So probably there are a lot of best practices that we could have integrated. We didn't do it. So let's see if it's now being done in the implementation phase.
Yes, we are expecting also some guidelines for this serious incident notification. And indeed, we do have a lot of experience when it comes to health, right? Medical devices you mentioned, but also critical infrastructure until now with NIS 1 moving to NIS 2. GDPR, I think no need to mention, everyone knows about the notification for data breach. So indeed, there are some best practices and lessons learned that one might want to aspire to. And let's not forget, usually it might be the same incident that just has impact on different parts. So eventually it really has to be synchronized in terms of deadline. Ideally, you notify your incident once and all the necessary authorities pick the information they need without you having to be liable for not reaching out to the 5 different authorities.
This was actually one point that we improved during the negotiations, because the original AI Act would have obliged you to do exactly that. So contact the AI authority that is responsible for you, but then also the cybersecurity authority, and so on and so on. Now there's a kind of one-stop shop, so you need to do it only once, but again, similar to what I said before, also here the exact procedures and so on are all a little bit unclear. Going back to this vagueness in the legal text that I was talking about, but on the other hand, to defend a little bit the AI Act, it's also typical because it's a new law, it's a very complex law, comprehensive law. So of course, at the very beginning, a lot of points are still open and need to be figured out. So with all my criticism, I need to defend it also a little bit that, yeah, it's quite normal that a lot of additional work is necessary after such a big law is entering into force.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. And we know that, okay, large organizations, they might have the structure already and they might have lower risk appetite. They would want to assess what they have against the requirements. But SMEs, when you are a startup starting a new product, a new company, you just have so much on your plate and your main concern is business. Is there someone willing to pay for my service? What would you tell to these SMEs which now need to also take into consideration something that they know is going to impact them, but they don't know exactly how? Would the AI Act be a burden, and what can we do to alleviate this?
Yes. So yes and no. Maybe to start with the no, so that it's not a burden. The AI Act is taking a lot of care of SME and is really trying to help them. There's a specific SME article there which is giving the AI office or the commission, but also member states, a lot of tasks. They need to execute over the next 2 years in order to make it easier for SMEs to invest in AI, to develop AI, to deploy AI, and so on and so on. There are the regulatory sandboxes that should also be a tool that enables AI SMEs to find out how to become compliant and together with the enforcement bodies to enter a kind of dialogue and to exchange a little bit of what are the demands, what are our problems in becoming compliant, and so on and so on. Hopefully, those regulatory sandboxes are also heavily connected with digital innovation hubs that are already existing, that are already conducting some SME programs, and so on. And as a final point, the AI Act has also, in certain areas, some reliefs for SMEs. Just to name one example, it's from micro companies. There is one extra paragraph that states that they don't need to do the full quality management system from Article 17, but just a heavily reduced one. And there are also other paragraphs or articles, for example, on technical documentation, where there are additional rules that should make it less burdensome for SMEs to fulfill those obligations. So again, on the bright side, there are a lot of points that were or have been included to make it more easy for SMEs to develop and to deploy artificial intelligence. On the negative side, the points that you mentioned, of course, kicks in. Small companies do not have the financial and also human resources to now say, okay, 10 people will take care for our compliance with NIS2, with DSA, with AI Act, with Platform Work Directive, and all those laws that are coming now, or that becoming applicable over the next months, and also those existing legislation like the GDPR and others. And this will be extremely tricky. So probably many SMEs are really thinking about, okay, do we now take this risk and are heavily investing in AI where everything is so uncertain, and maybe it could even happen that an area that is so far not categorized as high risk is suddenly becoming high risk over the next 1-2 years. So definitely you cannot take anything for granted right now. And maybe to stop on a more positive note, is that those companies that are early movers or that are engaging already now with the enforcement authorities, for example, via regulatory sandboxes, I think they will benefit a lot because those authorities are right now also rather uncertain how to interpret, how to execute everything. And if you are building up right now a good relationship with those authorities, I think they will regard you as kind of allies, and maybe you will benefit from being better in the known, having already established contacts that you can reach out to. And secondly, I think engaging in networks, large company networks, not only trade associations, but also all those company-driven, let's say, AI hubs that are currently being created and so on. This will probably help also startups and SMEs, because there's always one company that is very good in one niche area and has maybe already established a best practice, and many companies are willing to share those best practices. And this is why I think joining such a network is a really good thing to do right now, because then you maybe manage to deal with all those existing legislation out there in a much cost-efficient way.
May I politely add that you might want to also subscribe to our channel, because we address a lot of the questions you might be asking yourself in the journey of EU cybersecurity regulation. You mentioned regulatory sandboxes. Indeed, we have had an expert talk on what is it, how it would work, and what can companies do about it. We are continuously publishing content to make it clear at least what are the requirements, what are the best practices, what are the shortcuts in compliance made easy. But as you mentioned, Kai, engaging with authorities always pays back in the sense that they understand there is no bad intention here. So regulations are there to make, we all work with the same objective. We want to make better products. We want to make our customers' life safer and nicer. So if we know and align what are the difficulties where we should focus on, then at least maybe this regulation could also be your business advantage, because you provide some guarantee to your clients that the necessary expectations are met. But thank you so much. Again, you promised you came back after 1 year to share the final legislation. There's a lot in the making. I gather a lot of information would be coming in the next months as well. So let's keep follow Kai, subscribe to our channel as well, so that you keep up to date with all the developments and tips and tricks